Hi, and welcome. My name is Rebecca Thompson Hitt, and I am the founder and executive director of the Consciously Parenting Project. And it is my pleasure and delight to introduce to you Pam Leo, author of Connection Parenting, and one of my very dear friends. I am so happy to have you today, Pam. Welcome.
I am so happy to be here with you.
And I'm also here with Jen Kobrick. Jen Kobrick, introduce yourself for a moment and
Hi, I'm Jen Kobrick. I'm the facilitator for the membership group with the Consciously Parenting Project. So if you join that group, and you'll see my face a lot with content and help and ideas for things to think about and work on each month, as well as live calls, healing story circles, and ask me anything calls, and sometimes calls with outside experts that we bring in as well. So if you join the membership group, or if you're already in the membership group, then you'll see a lot of me there.
yeah, thank you, Jen. And thank you for taking such good care of our members. So grateful for you for that. We're the two of us, Jen and I, are going to be talking to Pam today about grace for your imperfect self. We thought that was a really important topic. I think it really resonates for us. I think it really resonates for a lot of parents. But before we start talking about that, I wanted to just share a little bit about Pam in case you don't know who she is and her work. And I was so lucky to have met you. I was just starting Consciously Parenting. So 2007, 2006, right in there is when I met you. And I found Connection Parenting and fell in love with the book. And I had a little crush, and thought I would message and just see what happened. And she messaged me back. And so, so I was so excited to have somebody to talk about this kind of parenting. Someone who really resonated with what I was saying and feeling and experiencing as a parent myself. So Pam Leo is a family literacy activist, a read aloud advocate, founder of the Book Fairy Pantry Project. So check that out if you aren't familiar with that, and author of Connection Parenting. Pam, do you have your book? I have the Spanish version of Connection Parenting. Oh,
let's see. It's the English
yeah. Oh,
Can you see it?
no,
No.
it's all blurry.
Oh, you know what? Because I have that fade in the background.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. There's Connection Parenting. So it looks familiar. It looks similar to this one. That one's the English one. And the new children's book, Please Read to Me, which I have here. It is a sweet, lovely, lovely board book that I had the privilege of watching come into being. It was so lovely. I know this is so dear to your heart.
It is.
Yeah, Pam has worked with children and families for more than 40 years. It's amazing. From her work with teen parents, parents in prisons, parents in recovery, and low-income parents, she learned that all parents want very much to provide for their own children. She has, quote, never met a parent who didn't want life to be better for their children than it was for them. Her enduring love of children's books, her passion for literacy, and her commitment to empowering parents all are combined in her new role as the founder of the grassroots literacy movement, the Book Fairy Pantry Project, whose mission is no child with no books, because books change children's lives for good. Oh, and I have so loved watching the evolution of the Book Fairy Pantry Project. It's been so amazing to see it grow. And so if you're in Maine or know someone in Maine, this is where Pam is doing her primary work, and she's getting books into the hands of children who don't have any books. So definitely check out her project if you haven't already. Beautiful.
It's the joy of my life. I love it.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about grace for your imperfect self, and even something that I just read in your bio, that you've never met a parent who didn't want life to be better for their children than it was for them.
It's true. I never have.
Yeah. And no matter what the situation is, that's the biggest hope for all of us. And I think that when we are in the throes of parenting and we don't do it the way we want to because it's important. We want our children's lives to be better than ours. But when we are in those places where we get stuck, we can be so hard on ourselves. Oh, yeah. And so what do we do? What words of wisdom do you have for us? Because, we can talk about how that happens. And I think I want to do a little bit of that because I think it brings in some grace, like we're changing intergenerational patterns.
Right. And it's big.
And it's big. It's not something that's easy that we can just wave a magic wand and one day start parenting the way that we want to. And
Right.
It's all good. It's all good. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, two things really come to my mind as soon as you said that. And one of them is, do you remember Scott Noel?
Yeah.
Well, one of his quotes that I included in my book because I just so loved it is that we will always be parenting in the gap between the parenting we aspire to and the parent we're capable of being in that moment. There will always be a gap between those two things. And that we really need to accept that gap is going to exist. And that alone, I think, gives us some grace. Like, okay, that wasn't the way I wanted to handle that. And then that brings me to, in my book, I talk about that you can always tell when a disconnect has been created between you and your child, because there are three things that they will do, at least one of them, and perhaps all three of them, is that they won't look at you, they won't talk to you, and they won't let you touch them. If any one or all three of those things are happening, we know there's a disconnect. And the only way that connection parenting can work is what I call the 3 R's of connection parenting, which are rewind, dating myself to the old VCRs where we would rewind, repair, and replay. And that is, for me, the grace of how we can do connection parenting, because we carry all those recordings. Every word we ever heard is recorded in there. And when our buttons get pushed, that's what plays. And before we can even, stop it from coming out of our mouth, it's already out there. And then we have to find a way to fix it. So the rewind is just to acknowledge what I just said, or the way I just was with you, was not okay. And I'm sorry. I don't want to talk to you that way or treat you that way, whatever it was. And then to repair it, to replay it and say, can we have a do-over? This is what I wish I would have said, and this is what I mean. And when we do that, well, number one, we're modeling for children that you can have a do-over, that we all mess up, that we all, are imperfect, and that we can do it over again. And that if we're willing to own it and, just say, people said that to me when I was a child, and it just came out my mouth, and it's not what I meant and not what I want. And it's incredible how forgiving children are to us when we will own our stuff and try to make it right. And then you'll see them be able to do it as well, because we're modeling that behavior. So maybe to their sibling or even to us. So for me, that's what gets you through. I mean, it's certainly what would get me through, is to be able to do that. To just say, oh, we need a do-over because that was not how I wanted to be with you. And we're not bad or wrong because we do that. It's just what got installed, And at the same time, not only is it hard not to say the things we did hear, it's also difficult to say the things we didn't hear. So if we didn't hear "I love you" or any of those kinds of things that are so affirming for children to hear, it can be an effort to do that. And that's one of the reasons that I love children's books so much. And there's a lot of evidence that we treat baby boys much less warmly than we treat baby girls. So one of the projects for my project that I do is I combine a onesie with a book that matches and a toy that matches. And I always try to put the I love you books with the colors that are traditionally thought of as boy colors, like blue and gray and, you know, that sort of thing, because volunteers pick these out off the shelf where I put them. And so I just want to make sure those I love you books go to the ones that might be given to a boy. So they will hear those words that may not come naturally to the parent. So yeah, that is my first thought about how we can give ourselves some grace.
Jen, anything you want to jump in there with?
One of the things that's really standing out to me listening to you talk about that, Pam, is how that process, which, you know, you're probably not here listening to this if you had that modeled, the process of repairing and you know, having that grace on the outside, right? Like saying, I need some grace for this, I screwed up.
Yes.
If we had that modeled, you probably are not here needing so much support. And so one of the things that's really standing out to me is how what a lot of us had modeled is like, if you apologize, it means you're like bad, like forever bad, not like you made a mistake, like you as a person are bad. And that perfectionism comes from not wanting to be in that position of being bad. And so I hear you really flipping that script to like the opposite. Like the apologizing is what makes you good
Right.
at doing this work. You know, that allowing yourself to be imperfect and then owning it and using the opportunity for repair, that is the good parenting. That is what is needed.
Yeah, I like it the way you took that a step further. Like, not only is it okay, it's great you know, to do that, because it makes us real and it makes us accountable. And it does give children that model that, yeah, we're all going to make mistakes and this is how we fix it.
Yeah.
There's actually a fourth thing I've added to it. And this came to me on a plane on the way to Nashville to be the keynote speaker at the Wild and Free Homeschooling Conference, is that if you ask your child to, after you have done a repair like that, if you ask your child to dance with you, like put on some music and dance, if they say yes, then the repair was successful. But if they say no, we still have work to do. And it's like almost fail proof, like, because it just, there's that sort of level of connection you have to be willing to dance with someone. And so it's sort of like a little way to check and see, was that a successful repair? And you can usually also tell because they will look at you, they will talk to you, they will let you touch them, all of which are required to dance. So it's, yeah.
Yeah. And just to say, as a parent myself, when I read your book and I started practicing this, I started hearing my children, just like you were saying it to me, oh man, I did not handle that really well. I'm so sorry. Can we do that again? And then seeing them do it with their brother, and having that show up, and that model being so powerful. So I just wanted to name, like, this works. This actually happens. And I also wanted to say, because Jen and I were talking a little bit before you joined us, and we were talking about there are those days as a parent where, you know, like, because in the explanation, it sounds so pretty, you know, it's like, oh, I messed up, I'm so sorry, let's do it again. And sometimes we don't have the capacity in that moment. So can we talk a little bit
The
about
gap.
that? We're like firmly in the gap. We're in the like
Firmly.
the abyss, what feels like sometimes.
So I am really, I mean, not a fan at all of giving time out, but I am a big fan of taking time out
Yeah.
and being able to say to a child, you know what, I need to take a time out for myself. I just need a few minutes to get myself back together again, and let that be okay. Now, you can't really do that with a toddler, because as you try to leave the room, they're going to follow you. And so you need to figure out a way to do it and stay in the same room for a very young child, because it's just not going to work. But to be able to just disengage for, you know, a few minutes and just say, I need to breathe, or however you can best explain it to a very young child. And, you know, you could invite them to have quiet time with you or something, but to not feel like we've got to rewind, repair, replay in that moment. We just don't have it. We just don't have it to be able to say, I need a few minutes. I just need a few minutes, and to give ourselves that, because I think sometimes we sort of feel that urgency of like, I'm losing it, you know, and that we've got to somehow make it perfect. And sometimes what we just need is to just take a break for a minute. So instead of giving a timeout to a child who's causing you to have that upset, is just saying, I need to take a timeout. And once again, when we model that, not a toddler, but as children get older, they will learn that, you know, whoa, I need a time. I need to get, you know, some time away for a second. And I just love that. I mean, modeling is everything. It's everything, because instruction just doesn't carry. You know, it's what we model that they're going to imitate. I love that quote. I can't think of the author right now, but he was like, children may not always do what we tell them, but they never fail to imitate us. James Allen, I think, maybe is the author of that quote. But I love that. I mean, because it's true. They're going to do what we do.
Yeah. And that, I think, you know, my oldest was really, really hard on himself. Talk about, you know, finding grace and seeing a child who's like so hard on himself. And as I started bringing in more grace, because I'm not perfect, and I'm admitting that I'm not perfect, and I'm going to mess things up, and it's okay. I saw him start to bring in more grace, and there started to be more space. And it wasn't because I, you know, was like, oh, come on, you've got to stop being so hard on yourself. It was because I stopped being so hard on myself when I could.
When you could is the key.
Because it
when you
wasn't
weren't in the gap.
like, yes, like let's be clear. This is not about 100% of the time. And I think that that's the other thing. We have this, and I blame schooling. I blame formal education for this, because an A is 90%, and we are striving for 100%, you know, all the time in our education system. And now all of a sudden we're parents, and you can't do 100% or 90% or half the time, even 50%. And that's an F in school.
Right.
It's an F. And so we look at ourselves as failing. F.
Right.
I'm a
Flunking
failure.
parenting 101.
I'm flunking. Right. And so, wow. But the research shows that it's actually more like 33% of the time, that if we can do that much right, that we're doing really well. That's totally different than the 100% that we think we're striving for.
Right.
33%. Yeah. Most parents, I say that to, stop and they think, I could probably do that.
That I might be able to do.
Right. Right. But the 100 where we beat ourselves up because we're not doing it perfectly. We're not doing it. We're not doing it the way that we think we're supposed to do it. And back to what you said in the beginning, we are changing. This is not a small thing. We are changing really big patterns that are hard.
And not even just our own patterns, but the cultural patterns. You
Yes.
know, when you say to people, apologize to your children, some people are horrified by that. Like, well, I'll lose all my authority. You know, it's like,
Right.
right. And it comes back to that power with rather than power over that I love so much from nonviolent communication. That book was just like so important to me. It
Mhm.
just was, that is huge. Just that little shift in words, you know, power with instead of power over, because most of us grew up with power over parenting, you know, authoritarian, the child's fear of losing the parent's love, or permissive parenting, which is the parent's child's love, which is pretty impossible, but we think that. And those don't work, you know, they don't. And so, but connection parenting can only work if we can do the grace, because there's no way that we're going to say, that sounds like a good kind of parenting and just do it. You know,
Right.
we had no practice at that, no model of that. Yeah. So we're going into whole new territory
Yeah.
with
Oh,
very
that
little support, I might add, from the culture often.
right. Right. Yeah,
I
that's
mean, I'm
huge.
it's encouraging now that I see so many things now are connection, connection, connection. But when I wrote the book in 2005, it was like not anywhere.
Yeah.
So, you know, I thought, well, this gives us another option, because when I was doing my workshops, people were starting to call it family-o parenting. And what does that mean? And I thought, I need to find a name for this, you know?
Yeah.
And that seemed like the obvious name because that's what it was about. Because without that connection, what do we have?
Mhm.
You know, and it's just like when we use power over, that's only going to work until they're as big as we are. If it does
Right.
that long, and then what do we have? Nothing, you know. But if we spend all those years building our connection, then we have something, we have influence.
Yeah.
And that's really the best we can hope for, is influence when, you know, when they're as big as we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My son, my oldest son is 6'3", 6'4". Um I, and I'm not.
Yep.
So, you know,
It's
it's
funny, all the friends I have who have boys, I always have wondered, what does it feel like to be a mom and go, "And I told you." You know, like, really,
yeah, I've never done that. So I don't know.
yes. But it so dramatically shows the power over power with thing, you know, like, oh yeah, you're gonna be telling this person, you know, I told you? I don't think so.
It's best to find some other strategies when they're still smaller than you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Jen, you want to jump in here with?
Yeah, I'm thinking about one of the things that comes up over and over again with members and with clients is like, you know, we jump into this work and start making changes, and then sometime later, usually like a few years down the road, where it's like we've made a lot of progress, you know, and things feel different. We've learned a lot, and it's still hard. And then it's like somewhere along the line, people come up against this, like, I thought I was gonna like do the thing and then it was gonna be done. And and the realization that actually this isn't like a destination that we're getting to. It's a path that we're walking forever. And a path that our children will be walking forever. And that our goal is like, you know, to deviate the path, but we don't get to the end of it. And really probably nobody ever will, because that's not the point, right?
Mhm.
But when we have in our histories that the way we were raised hurt, and we don't want that for our children, and the work that we're doing to change the patterns hurts, and we don't want that for ourselves. And I think there's a period there of grief and sadness and letting go of the idea that we're going to be all done with that and it's all going to be finished and wrapped up with a little bow and perfect, happy, fun time.
Right. Mission accomplished.
I
Yeah.
do
And
like the
sometimes
little
there's
bow
a myth
idea.
attached. Yeah. Sometimes there's like a myth attached to that, that like some other parent already has that, right? Like me or Rebecca or you or somebody else whose like face is on this work, right? That they've already completed their,
And that
their
nothing
project.
ever comes up ever again. And our
Right.
lives are rainbows and unicorns and we're good. And lots of bows
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. And so I think one piece of that, of the grace for that, is the community part, the seeing that we're not the only ones who are imperfect. And that another piece of it is having the space for that grief about the fact that we're imperfect and that we're always going to be imperfect.
Yeah.
I think too, attached to that is some grief about that. Even as we're imperfectly making these changes, it's for many people such a far cry from what they got, that we're trying to do this and we think, how might I have been if I had gotten any of this, or some of this, and some grief for ourselves of the lost parts of ourselves that we didn't get in our childhood. Like I think I turned out to be a pretty okay human being, but it's like, what might I have been if I had had what I wrote about, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. And there is a lot of grief there. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
One of the things that I orient to that helps in that space sometimes, and in particular in the space of how hard it is that being imperfect means that my children will also have things to work on.
Mhm.
And one of the things that helps for me in that space is to think of each of these moments, each of these shifts, and each of these repairs as like the butterfly effect. Like I am trying to be the butterfly flapping its wings. I don't need to do the work of like upending history. I just need to be making those little flaps,
I
and
love that.
in in the pattern of generations and iterations, it will have that big effect.
And one of the things I talk about in the book too is that the more often we can do the kind of parenting that we want to do, like doing the connection time and doing special time and listening, the more often we can do that, the more our children can weather the times when we can't do it, when we just don't have it in that moment to do it that way. They know us in the times we can do it. And so we sort of set a different standard for them. I mean, we may have our children saying, Mom, you need a do-over. Like that's when you really know you have connection and that children feel really safe if they can say that to us. So I always tell parents, don't be tempted to say to your child, do you need a do-over? Because you're modeling that they're going to say to you, do you need a do-over? But, I think it would be incredible if a child can reach a point where they can say that to a parent, like, and, will kind of wake us up and go, oh yeah, I didn't do that very well, did I? And, they will hold us accountable, and that's as it should be. Yeah.
And that's something that most of us, when it happens is like, oh, right. I remember one mom sharing a story about that and how one day her child said to her, you're not saying something that makes me feel good. And can you try it with other words? and, and it was like a shock, like, oh, wait. And then, oh, yes, I can do that. And how it is such a beautiful thing when our children
It
know
is.
how they deserve to be treated, and when they can say it to us in a way that we can hear, because
You know,
we're
I could
trying to
never
find
have said that.
words. Yeah, I know.
That
No,
would, I mean,
no,
wouldn't ever.
no. There has to be enough safety for that to happen.
There's a post that's been going around a lot lately that I'm trying to think who said it, but it was that when we speak harshly to children, they don't stop loving us, they stop loving themselves. And it's like, think on that. And it's like, whoa, is that sobering?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because children always believe they deserve how they're treated, always, unless we're doing this model with them. So it's really empowering to them to have a new standard of respect and what they deserve. Because if they, you know, it's a setup to for actually being abused by people, by society, if they feel like they deserve nothing and treating them with disrespect is okay. So it behooves us to set their standard really high of how they deserve to be treated if we want to keep them safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I was just thinking about before the call, I was thinking about, you know, how our own inner voice comes from the way that we were treated, you know, much to what you were just saying, you know, that we feel we deserve it. We don't have the ability to differentiate, oh, mom's having a bad day or dad's having a bad day, or, you know, that's really not about me, unless someone says, hey, that's mine, you know, I'm having a bad day, and that's not about you,
and you didn't deserve that,
and you didn't deserve it, right? But if we don't have those words said to us, then we believe that it is our fault. We believe, and that voice becomes our own inner critic.
yes.
And that's part of what we're navigating and negotiating as adults when we're parenting, is our own inner critic. You know, those own the things that we learned about ourselves that may or may not have been true.
Okay.
From our relationships, from our interactions, from either the things that were said directly or indirectly, the things that happened or the things that didn't happen for us, and the story that we have about ourselves.
Yeah. And I mean, a phrase that I didn't have when I was writing the book is the phrase gaslighting, but that happens to children all the time. I can remember so many times being told, you're just too sensitive. You're just too sensitive. Not your needs don't matter. You're too sensitive. You know, if I objected to how something was, you know, coming down, or you're just, and so, I mean, that's like the highest form of gaslighting, like, your reality is not real. So I don't think we really think about that in terms of children. And like I said, I didn't have that word. I didn't even know what it meant. I don't think I'd ever heard of it at the time I wrote the book. But as I started hearing it and understanding the explanation of it, I'm feeling like, wow, that happened to me all the time.
Yeah.
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 And so I think we do need to think about that in terms of children.
Absolutely.
To not invalidate their reality. If it hurts them, it hurts them.
Right.
We may not have meant it to hurt them, but we need to, you know, acknowledge that that's how it came down for them.
Right. Yeah, I have an adult parent and child right now, adult child, and his parents, and they're negotiating a lot of that right now. Even in adulthood, his experience of his childhood is like, no, it wasn't like that. It's like, no. That was his experience of it, and that's what he needs space to just be heard. We don't have to always understand or agree, but if we can make the space to listen and create room for their feelings, which I know is a huge part of your work as well, then we can move through that and come back into connection.
I mean, nothing creates connection more than being heard and feeling heard. You know, and that just cements it right there.
Yeah, and we need that as the adult. We need people to listen to us so that we have the space and capacity to listen to our children.
Absolutely.
Pam, would you do me a favor and would you talk a little bit about healing story circles and your experience of a healing story circle?
I would love to, because it has been one of the best experiences of my life to be able to be with a group of other people and be able to tell my truth, my experience of something that happened, or, whatever is up for me. And not only have it be safe and be accepted and respected, but validated, like reflected back to me. Oh, that's what they heard me say. I didn't realize it. Like it's seeing what I expressed, like through a bigger lens or something. And wow, that's so empowering. It is so empowering. And it starts helping you like yourself. Like, none of these people ran away when I told my worst truth. They stayed with me and, said, uh-huh, I hear you. And yeah, that is incredibly empowering. So imagine doing that with our children.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's
Yeah.
huge.
And
Yeah.
we need to have those experiences, especially if we didn't have them growing up because our parents didn't know how and they didn't have those experiences.
Right.
We have to have a container where we can have those experiences so that we can give our kids that we didn't get. We need to still get it. And we can get it
And
now.
I think that is also one of the key pieces, is that we can't even begin to expect to do this work if we do not have that support of a place to take our hard stuff. Because if our cup is already filled with hard stuff, we have no room and no attention to listen to our children, and their stuff is going to trigger our stuff. But if we have a safe place and, even one listening person where we can empty that out and create some space, then we can operate from there. But trying to operate from a full Hertz cup is pretty difficult, pretty impossible. Yeah, it's probably one of the, well, the way I describe it in the book is, imagine if your parenting partner has been gone for the week on business, whatever, and you're expecting them home on Friday night, and it has been a week. The dog had to go to the vets and the car broke down and the washer, just one of those weeks. And now it's Friday night and you're expecting help, and you get a phone call instead saying the plane's been grounded for fog or something and they're not coming in till the next day. How do you feel about your children and being with them? Right? Do you have anything to give? No, nothing.
Cup is empty.
Completely. And then contrast that with, it's a Saturday morning, your good friend shows up whom your children adore and says, I'm giving you the day off. And the children are cheering as they love this person. So you have no guilt. And they're like, and here's some money. We just go treat yourself to a day doing what makes you happy and filling your cup.
I want that.
And
friend.
you come back at 5 o'clock. How do you think you feel about being with your children? Delighted.
Yay.
Your love cup is full instead of your Hertz cup, and you have something to give. You probably brought them home something, and you're just delighted to see them again because you got to restore yourself. And that's so much of not what happens for parents, because there is so little support, and people don't have their villages and they don't have their flock or their nest. And, for a long time, it was a 6-week class that I taught. And parents were saying, this is just too hard. I can't do this connection parenting thing. It's just too hard. And I thought, why is this too hard? And then, finally the light bulb went on. It was like, because they're trying to do it with no support. So I added
Chapter
the 7th chapter, the needs of parents, and just focused on, growing your village, growing your extended family so that you have the support, because parenting was never intended to be a 1 or 2 person job. This is not, doesn't work. So, but it's work to create that for your family and for yourself, to build those relationships. If you don't have it naturally by nearby extended family that you like, that you trust with your children, you've got to create it. You have to create family of choice. And it's work, but it's work we have to do if we want to do this the way we want to do it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Anything to add there, Jen?
The last thing I want to add is that, like we talked about community care last month. Um, that's what we're doing here. We're building a village. And, you know, it's a 21st century answer to a village problem. It's not going to be a village, you know, online that can show up at your door on a Saturday morning and give you the day off.
Necessarily.
Physical space. But you know, the beauty of technology is that we don't necessarily have to get all of our relational needs met by the same couple of people. You know, we can have a village here on the internet that fills our needs for connection and being heard, being understood, you know, and spilling those hurts. And then there's one less piece of village that we're desperately trying to scrape out for ourselves. One more piece of support, you know, helping us to hold that space with our kids.
Yeah. Because we may not find that, you know, unicorn of a person or, you know, people in our lives who can bring us soup when we're sick and take our kids for the day and listen to us when we need somebody to listen to us. And so if we can have spaces where we're getting different needs met, that is the wisest thing that we can do, I think, as parents. Yeah. So yeah. And this is one way we offer the healing story circles that Pam was talking about that are a safe container where you can get some of your emotional needs met. Help you have a little bit less full of a hurts cup and a fuller love cup, because
Absolutely.
we need
And
that.
I'm finding it too, that I feel like it's growing me up. I don't know. You know what I mean? I just feel like I'm stepping more into my own self by having that it's sort of like the difference with, you know, like a plant being in, you know, sand and being in fertile soil. You know, the healing story circles are really like fertile soil for us to grow in, because it creates that container for us to have those feelings, express those feelings, have acceptance, feel heard. And we grow when we get that. We just do. Because I feel like I am a really different person than I was when I started healing story circles. Like, I'm willing to take up space in the world now.
Yeah.
And I wasn't before.
Oh, that makes me so happy. And I've seen you grow. And, you
Yes,
know, I
right.
thought you were pretty spectacular, you know, when I met you in the first place, but it's been such a joy and an honor to watch you grow and step more into yourself and say things like, I like myself. Yay.
It is. I mean, I can't think of a richer place. Like, you don't get to go back and have a childhood do-over, but this is the closest thing I know of to it. Healing story circle. Yeah. For sure.
Yay.
A childhood
So
do-over.
beautiful. So
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
My experience has been the same. I mean, even, you know, this morning I had my healing story circle, you know, with my colleagues, where we have that space to share with each other. And I didn't share anything today, you know, but being in that space, I also got interrupted like 3 or 4 times by small children. And, you know, we're all parents. We know that's life. That happens. And yeah, being in that space and having that, you know, that kind of understanding, you know, understanding someone else, and that feeling of community with someone else. You know, I've been a lot more patient today than I would have been if I hadn't joined that call this morning.
And to reiterate, I heard you say you didn't even share. That
Yep.
you were just in the space, and being in the space is healing all by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
That's really powerful. Yeah. Awesome. So we're going to continue our conversation with Pam in our membership. And so if you would love to join us in the month of May, we will be having another conversation with Pam, and we would love to have you be part of it and, get to talk a little bit more about these ideas and ask questions and share your experiences. And that's just, join us in the membership. It is a pay what you can. We're trying to make it accessible to as many people as possible because we want as many people to have the support and resources as we can, because that makes the world a better place, one family at a time. And so we want you to have the support. You deserve to have the support. So come join us. You are welcome. Yeah. So come meet Jen and Pam and myself.
I love it.
Yeah. So if you have questions, you can reach out to me, Rebecca at consciouslyparenting.com. Hopefully you can spell consciously. That's like my one downfall with my name. So, but send me an email and let me know if there's anything that I can do to support you and help you get in touch with your community. We are waiting for you. So thank you.
Rebecca,
Yeah.
I was also just going to say, if people know what their questions are, and I don't know if this can work logistically, but if they could send them to you, that would be great too, because if I have some time to think about things, I can have a more ready thought on it.
Absolutely. So we will definitely send that out as well. So you've got questions for Pam, you can send those to me as well. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pam.
Oh, it's totally my joy.
Your time, your wisdom, your heart, sharing that with us. And Jen, thank you so much for being here and for also, I always say you're representing our members, asking the questions that they're not here to ask right now and really holding them in your heart. So I just really appreciate that and all the work you do with them. So thank you so much. And we will see both of you in May. Look forward to it.
Me too.
Thank you.
Right,
Both of
thank
you.
you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.